so this is me making my first video in a while, and I thought, given the tens of people who watched my last bike videos, I thought, let's keep picking that winner. Let's make another bike video. It all started so innocently. I had 2 bikes that I really enjoyed and were perfect for me, and 1 bike that I had a nostalgic value attached to, and so I thought, what everyone does, I need another bike. One of those bikes with big tires and no flat bars, and basically one of those bikes that the internet seems kind of to gang up on you to buy. Yeah, I'm talking about a gravel bike. It's the be-all end-all, right? The last bike you ever need. It's equally at home carrying your lycra-clad taint on the back of a smelly Peloton, or sloughing beard oil off your face on one of those dirt track downhills before carrying off the day with an overtly badly named sour beer. Problem is, those shits are expensive, and I'm on a budget. Given I'm a dad, giving half of my income to my children's destroyed electronic devices, getting the latest Canyon Shale Smasher was really not an option. But I'd seen that people on the internet had had summer success taking old mountain bikes and converting them to gravel bikes, because that's all they are, right? It's a pile of shit, they're not new. It's just old stuff with new parts. So I grabbed this one, 200 bucks. GT Avalanche, it's a good name, okay name, I think, I don't know. Belonged to some rich old guy who had way too many bikes, which is usually a sign of halfway decent maintenance, or at least sheltered neglect, because he's just got so many to choose from. And it was a decent size. It has a nice flat top tube, so I don't look like some dirt track midget, like sitting on a badly painted cattle with my arms out like this, looking like a flea on the back of a big dog. So the plan was strip off the 1985 X-Men gaudy paint job and paint it myself. I've never painted before, but how hard could it be? It's not like there's people whose whole jobs and professions are related to painting things. Yeah, I figured beginner's arrogance, that's the go. Anyway, here's how wrong I was in a series of detailed videos I shot during this experience. Enjoy. This is a video that's been made before. Oh, by the way, in an entirely different and separate way than I'm an idiot, is I filmed the whole strip down of this bike to show which parts there were and help me put it back together again, and then deleted that card on a different job, thinking that I'd already copied it over. So yeah, here's the rest of it from the middle. A few times, but perhaps my angle's a little different. See, I guess I could be favourably called a tightwad. I don't want to spend $1,000 on a group, $1,000 Australian on a custom gravel group set. I'm going full Chinese, Alibaba forks, Alibaba handles, sensor group set, and just gonna try and get the most bike I can from under $1,000. We'll see whether I meet that total, but let's have a look at the bike first. So I purchased the frame for 200 bucks on Facebook Marketplace. It came with everything except a front and rear derailleurs. They've been removed, but the gears and wheels and everything else was there. In fairly good condition, few scratches, no bends or anything like that. The only problem was when I tried to remove the bottom brackets to replace the group set, I found that the bottom brackets were completely threaded. And so what happened was I filmed this video already, and that literally 3 or 4 months ago I had to take it into a shop to get the bottom bracket sawed out with a power saw, and then in that ensuing 3 months I somehow deleted the video. But not a lot of progress due to that fact, so I figure it's probably a good time to start with having stripped the frame down, getting it stripped back and repainted. This is after 1 application. As you can see, nearly complete with the paint stripping. I would say the only problem so far is that then I woke up clearing massive amounts of mucus from my nose. So even outdoors this stuff's pretty toxic. I wear a mask. Day 2. And here's where I'm up to. Alright, so this is the most boring part, sanding off all the little bitties, which is why I'm enlisting some help. You like boring work, don't you, Charlie?
Right, you signed me in boring work. I'm out of here.
I promise it will be super exciting. Will you still help?
Sure.
And what about bribery?
Huh?
Bribery.
What is bribery?
Minecraft time.
Okay.
No. You got to do the work first. Yes, good minion. Scrub. Helping. Good boy.
I I really wish I never did this.
Alright, so now, much later, it's time to lay a base coat down on the frame. I've chosen to use this etched primer, basically because it bonds to the sanded aluminium a lot better, apparently. I'm going to give it a couple of coats and see just how smooth it is with the surface in the way that it is. I mean, it's not perfect. I'm not one of those OCD guys who's going to like get it millimeter perfect before sanding. I'm hoping the primer does something to smooth things out. I suppose worst comes to worst, I can always light sand the primer, make that nice and smooth, but let's see how we go. It's the first time. Got a coat of the grey primer on. As I said, this is my first time going, so and as you can see, it dries in different states. It goes on dark and then dries to like a light grey. I don't think it's too bad, except this first panel for some reason bubbled like hell, and I'm gonna have to sand that off. And also, if you look over here, you can see where a small moth landed mid-paint, so I'm gonna have to sand that off too. I guess that's sort of inevitable when you're outside. There's gonna be insects, but not too bad. Also, I'm not gonna be able to progress straight to an overcoat either though. After some sanding and some bubble removal, you can still see that it's going to need another coat and a little bit of more sanding, but we're pretty smooth. All things considered. I got rained on before, which wasn't helpful. And these humid conditions mean it's not really drying as quickly as I'd hoped, but not bad. Could have been worse. Alright, so this is where we're at with the primer. I've just sanded off a few little inconsistencies, but I think I'm about ready to paint. Now, I know that you're seeing a little bit of bare metal there, but I'm using a self-priming paint by Spray.bike that supposedly means you don't really need primer at all. You can spray to bare metal, they say. So I guess we'll see if that's true on these little patches here, because I am out of primer. I'm using this Parsons Green Spray.bike. I'm not sure how many. I've got enough for one layer. I'm not sure how many I'm going to need. Hopefully I won't need to buy a second one. But we'll see how this goes on, see how it drips, and see whether I mess it up. Wish me luck. This has actually been kind of a disaster. The coating has come on extremely powdery, as you can see. So I'm going to really have to find some way to smooth this off, whether it's through sanding and recoating. It's relatively warm today, but not stupid warm. So I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know why it's come out this way, but it doesn't look good. A lot of splotches and drips. Alright, so it's time for a bit of a catch-up video after a little bit of a delay. So I've learned a lot about spray painting in these past few weeks. Okay, I'll give you a bit of a rundown on what happened. I applied the primer coat, I got it smooth, and then I went applying the Spray.bike can, and whilst I obeyed all the instructions, there was a hidden instruction, and I think that needs to be pointed out. Don't spray in direct sunlight. I think what was happening was the direct sunlight was hitting it and drying the paint before it hit the surface. So once I'd expended that entire can trying to get that smooth, I realized I'd have to sand it all the way back off again. Once I'd sanded that back off at an immense amount of time, I then decided to apply another coat of spray primer, and I seemed to have some problem with the consistency, and it came out with white splatters in it. So I had to sand that back again too. But then after another coat of primer and sanding that back off, I ordered another Spray.bike. Australia Post lost it. I decided I couldn't wait and just bought some standard rattle cans of a similar color from Bunnings. Now I've put that on, and I've decided to start painting indoors with a mask on, and it's come out well. So I'm literally just applying my second coat, and then we'll finally be ready to start assembling. It's never to spray in direct sunlight. That is just really seeming to... the other thing is don't spray when there's any wind, because that is, again, that increased air pressure, that seems to be affecting it as well. Make sure your distance is correct for the paint. Now, regular Bunnings or hardware store spray paint seems to require only 20 centimeters of distance, whereas the powder coating Spray.bike was more like 10 centimeters, so half the distance. So in other words, it dries at a shorter distance. You need to wipe with a soft cloth to remove any debris or dust that's settling into the paint after each time. Now that we've got the painting done, and I think it's looking alright, it's time to lay the decals on for the clear coat. So I'm just going to measure that out and see how it goes. I'm going for a minimal look. I've got a lot of stickers here, but I think I only want to use a couple of them. Alright, so now that I've finished the painting job on this GT double triangle frame, I thought I'd just collect a few of my thoughts on what I learned as a completely novice painter. So basically, I stripped the frame back using regular can paint stripper and a brush and scraper, and that was pretty easy. The guy in Bunnings told me not to do that and that I should do it all by hand sanding, and I'm really glad I didn't do that because it was still pretty laborious even to use the paint stripper and took some time. In fact, it took enough time that I then got a wire brush set and a sanding brush set on an electric drill to tidy up the funny little areas under the triangle like this that really take some finesse. I found that any of the scratches that it left, that were left by the brushes on the aluminium were covered up with a little bit of light sanding, and then the primer meant that they didn't show up after that anyway, so it was totally fine. I then did a couple of coats of primer. It was fairly simple, but this is where I learned that you should not be spraying outdoors. We've had really changeable weather from rain to sun to wind in Australia at the moment, and every time the sun would hit it, the paint would dry too easy and create a powdery surface that had to be sanded back. Same with the wind. The wind would also dry out the particles before they hit the frame. And then again, the distance from the frame, if I went too far back, more than say 20 centimeters, then it would dry too much. And then if I went too close, it would create blobs. But I think every spray painter knows that. After that, I used Spray.bike, which is a somewhat popular company for making spraying bike frames. Their paint is a self-etching primer. So you're supposed to not have to use a self-etching powder coat. You're not supposed to have to use primer, but I just did because I didn't know how much paint I'd need to get a coverage. One can was not enough to get enough coats, but it didn't really matter in the end because I had messed it up so bad. What I did, and what you should never do, is I sprayed it outdoors. I sprayed it in the wind, as I said before. I hadn't learned from my mistakes, and I sprayed at 20 centimeters like I did with the primer. Now with Spray.bike, this powder coating stuff, it dries even faster than the primer, so it basically coated the bike in a sandy texture. And thinking I was doing something wrong, I painted the whole bike that way, and then thinking it would dry properly, it did not, and I had to sand the whole frame back, and I was definitely swearing at myself at that point. Whilst waiting for another can to come back, I decided I was going to finish the job with just a standard metal paint that I got from Bunnings, and that actually worked fine. It's this Dulux Metal Shield stuff. The colour wasn't exactly right, it was a little bit cooler than I liked, but it was cheap and it was there. So once I followed the directions and I started spraying indoors, that actually worked really well, and I got everything done pretty easily. So yeah, I applied 2 cans worth of that, and I did actually accidentally scratch the frame on my bike stand by moving it around too much and hitting against things, and I was forced to avoid fully resanding back and spraying areas using a paintbrush to touch up option because I'd already started applying some top coat. That wasn't perfect. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but what I would do is I'd spray a little bit of paint onto a cardboard box and use a paintbrush to get a bit of the paint and fill in the gaps. It didn't look great, and sanding it back was really hard without hitting the metal of the primer again. So is there a better way? Probably just sanding the whole thing back and redoing it is probably the answer. But at this point I'd be too far and I didn't bother. Lastly, I did the decals. The decals were pretty straightforward. I use chalk and a measuring tape to get things on there, and then using a ruler and a cloth to press it down. Not too much bubbles, but I definitely did have some issues with the chalk scratching the paint and then needing more sanding. Then I needed that sanding to remove the chalk scratches, then got down to primer, needing respray, and then more masking. So used a crayon or something really soft, even like a soft pencil maybe, to mark out your decals before you put them down, so you can wipe them off without scratching the undercoat, which seems to be quite delicate. Perhaps that's the paint I used. Lastly, I used the Spray.bike to create a clear coat. That's basically a matte clear coat. It had a couple of effects I really liked. One was that it's yellowed the paint, and I thought the color that I bought from Bunnings was a bit too cool, whereas that warmed it up a little bit. So that was a nice effect. But there's a couple of, and obviously added a really nice matte finish and smoothed out some imperfections in the base coat. So that's cool. I see why people like clear coat. However, it dripped heaps, even when I thought I was having a really light hand and keeping a really good distance. So I had to sand it back a few times in the drips, but it sanded easily and was easy to kind of recoat afterwards, which worked quite well. And I only needed one can to get a good couple of coats of clear coat over. So that's what I've learned so far. I'm working on to the build next, but that's what I've learned. Hopefully some of that helps you if you're looking to do this for the first time.